Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ryan in Singapore. Welcome to our mindfulness practice. Today's topic is the story you tell yourself. And this topic is related to the topic that we had a 2 weeks ago or so when it comes to envisioning the ideal future. And also related to part of the resilience strategy, which is cognitive resilience. So inevitably we have setbacks whenever we're envisioning our ideal future. And cognitive resilience is this idea of what is the story that we tell ourselves about what's going on, and what degree of control do we have over that story. So this is also related to envisioning the ideal future, because if we don't have some story in our minds, then what tends to play out is whatever subconscious story is going on. So maybe we're not even aware of what it is that's causing us to behave in a certain way. Where is my self-defeatism coming from? A lot of times it has to do with a story that we're telling ourselves, and often that story isn't even in the realm of the conscious, that it's something that's behind the scenes that we don't know is happening. So there are a few steps to take to start to change this story. Well, and I guess before we go there, why is this important at all? Is this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that happens as we tend to live out the stories that we think are supposed to happen to us. And that's interesting too, right? Is that, sometimes it's along the lines of deservingness. What is it that I deserve out of this situation? Some examples of stories that we may tell ourselves are like imposter syndrome. Like, how did I get in this job? Like, what am I doing here? It's not me. I can't believe that I'm here. I'm not qualified to do this job. What's going on? I'm going to fail at this job. And then inevitably what happens is we start to kind of live out things to make that false prophecy come true. So it is really important. And kind of what happens on a psychological level is that subconsciously our brains prepare our bodies for what we think is supposed to happen, or what we think is going to happen. If we think we're not going to be successful, then everything inside of us is setting up that lack of success. So just think of, if your teacher says like, "Hey, what happened to your Spanish grades? Why are your Spanish grades so low? I can't believe that you've had such a setback. I don't think you're going to pass Spanish this year." What is that? What's that commentary going to do to you and your self-confidence? And especially, imagine that you're a middle school student. Right, so let's go back in time and see how that affects your psyche. And as you examine this, you can see that the chance of failure becomes significantly higher as our confidence crumbles. And so now you don't even need to have an external person in this scenario, that you can be the one who's telling yourself. And by the way, you are not, yes, you're a different person than you were in middle school, but at the same time, that little kid is still inside of you. And still can be affected by not only what it is that people around you tell you, but what you tell yourself. So this story that you tell yourself is very important, and has a great impact on what happens to you in your future. So, and just because of how we how our minds lay down that path work. That path is already set down ahead of us subconsciously. And a lot of times, these stories that we tell ourselves are in the subconscious realm. So envisioning the ideal future is for you to do that exercise. It's kind of that journaling exercise to see yourself 5 years in the future as if all the good things that could possibly happen did happen. And what does that future look like? Just to give you an idea, right? Maybe it's not exactly going to happen, but law of probability says that there is a chance for things to turn out in the most idealistic way possible. It is possible for sure. So to envision what it is so that when you start to get to these points in your life, you can kind of remember that and reflect back on the ideal future and go, oh, right, here's kind of where I saw that going if everything went the way that I planned. And then step 2 in that exercise was the resilience portion of it. So we have several levels of resilience. 1, the inner calm. 2, the emotional resilience that we can build up through our mindfulness practice. And 3 was cognitive resilience. So being aware of our explanatory style, how we talk to ourselves and the kind of stories that we tell ourselves. We tend to think that when we have a setback, that we kind of catastrophize that setback, that it becomes in our minds bigger than it actually is. We see that as, the 3 P's that I talked about is personal, permanence, and pervasiveness, right? Personal, we think a lot of times that our setbacks are exclusively ours, that they are 100% for us, and that nobody has similar setbacks. And so this isn't true. It can help to remember that we are not alone in our struggles. Permanence, we tend to think that whatever it is that's happened, the impact is going to be with us forever, and we're absolutely stuck because of this setback, and we're never going to get any additional progress towards our ideal future because this goal that has not been met has some huge permanent consequence. And as I say huge, it goes into the realm of pervasiveness. Every single aspect of my life is affected by this goal not being met, is kind of what we tend to tell ourselves, when in fact, if you look more closely, you'll see that it is in fact isolated, that this is not this is not something that is going to affect every single area of your life. And let's just use a very simple example of, I say something stupid at a party, right? Like there's an interaction happening at a party and I say something stupid, and then I just kind of feel like all eyes are on me. Everyone's going to remember this forever, right? All eyes are on me is personal. Everyone's going to remember this forever. This is just the most horrible moment of my life, and it's going to haunt me forever. And then, I'm going to be affected in every single aspect of my life. Like socially, I'm not going to be able to survive any longer because of this mishap, and it's going to affect my job, and it's going to affect my relationships, And so that's what tends to happen in that, especially in that moment, as we really catastrophize what it is that's going on. And so what's the strategy? The strategy, 1, is to be aware that it's happening, right? So that's the very first step, is to notice that story that I tell myself. So what is the story that's going on? Because like I said, a lot of times it's unconscious. It's underneath our conscious level. So can I be aware of that story? 2, maybe understanding where that story is coming from can help. To help us understand why it's there and why it keeps showing up. And then, 3, addressing whatever it is that's there. This is kind of the optional step. We'll maybe call it 2.5. Step 2.5, addressing what's there, because it's not always as important. If we address what's underneath it, then we can help to keep that story keep ourselves from writing new harmful stories about ourselves. So that's step 2.5. Step 3 is to choose a different story, right? We can have a different story that we tell ourselves. And that's part of cognitive resilience, is recognize that these things are false that we tell ourselves. And we can actively change what it is that we tell ourselves. And we can really remember that, hey, this catastrophe isn't as big as my mind is making it out to be. That it's not going to affect every single area of my life. I'm not, it's really easy to feel like I'm the star of my life, and that everything that happens to me is remembered by everybody forever. Just to remember that maybe we're not as a big a star as we think we are. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get into our meditation. I saw there was a bunch of action in the chat. I just kind of noticed there was scrolling. So I'll take a look at it after our meditation. And as I was preparing this morning, I look around my singing bowl that I usually use to end the meditation isn't here. So I'm going to end the meditation with just the sound of my voice, which I've done in the past. So just be ready for that. So let's get comfortable. So I encourage you to sit up straight and tall. Hands resting on the knees or in the lap, or wherever is comfortable for your hands. Your arms just kind of hanging by their own weight, like heavy curtains, just kind of hanging there. Noticing the shoulders. In fact, maybe you even want to roll your shoulders a few times, move your head back and forth, side to side, just to kind of help stretch out the muscles, to encourage a little bit of additional relaxation. Notice the face and the muscles in the face, the jaw, the forehead, and bring attention to the nose if you like. Notice the movement of air in and out of the nostrils as you breathe. See if you can keep your attention focused on that feeling of air moving through the nostrils. And seeing if you can open your curiosity to this experience of breathing. With beginner's mind, maybe it's the first time you ever really noticed what it feels like to have the air moving through your nostrils as you breathe. And even if it's not, can you really open to this with that kind of first-time curiosity? Where on the nose do you feel the breath? Do you feel it on the skin, on the outside of the nose? Is there some sensation on the inside of the nostrils? What's it like? It's not the same as being touched. Somehow you can know that air is moving through your nostrils. Do you notice the difference between the inhalation and the exhalation? Cooler air as you're breathing in, warmer air as you're breathing out. Maybe the nostrils are sucking in slightly with the vacuum of the inhalation, and with the exhalation flaring out a little bit naturally. Are you able to feel the air moving across the upper lip as you breathe in and out? So all of our nostrils are a little bit different. So the way we experience breath is also different for every person. So seeing if you can concentrate the attention there. Maybe your mind wanders away. Maybe you're thinking about something that's going to happen in the future, or maybe you're frustrated about trying to do this meditation. Maybe you find the concentration challenging. If you do, is there any story behind it? I can't do this. I'm not a meditator. Are often stories that we may hear. Remember that there is no failure in mindfulness practice. As long as you are intending to keep your mind focused, you are meditating. So don't believe those stories that say that if your mind is blank, you aren't doing it right. Of course our minds aren't blank. Our brains are designed to think. So as best you can, keeping that attention on the air moving through the nostrils. And if today your nose is blocked, you can't breathe through your nostrils, of course you can allow your attention to move somewhere else that you can feel the breath. Or you can be mindful of something completely different. Using the sensation of your buttocks against your chair or cushion can be the object of meditation as well. So for those of you who are with me, doing your best to keep your attention fully at your nostrils. And I'm going to let the last 5 minutes of our practice time to be in silence, to let you work on your own. Just remember, each time the mind wanders away, whatever distraction you have, just gently acknowledge it, let go of it, and come back to observing the breath. And now let's begin to transition out of our period of formal practice. So whatever's been going on, wherever your mind has been, I would encourage you to just, as best you can, fully focus your attention on the next 3 breaths. And when you've finished that 3rd exhale, feeling free to open your eyes, to move around, to stretch out. Thanks. Thank you for practicing with me today. How'd it go? So I'm going to move into looking at the chat and going through the chat here shortly. But the kind of one of the things that you can think about and share is what happened during the meditation. I don't know about you, but almost always during my meditations, I have some kind of little story that I'm telling myself that shows up in there. So often when I get distracted, I might get distracted for a long period of time. And as that's going on, when my mind finally snaps back, and I'm aware of that, and I let go of whatever it is that had distracted me, there's usually a little time in there where there's some self-judging thought that might show up. I go like, oh, I can't believe I got distracted by that. I thought this was going to be the perfect meditation this time. Stuff like that. And so the idea behind this is that when you can become aware in your meditation practice of these little kind of stories that you tell yourself, and you notice these small ones, then it becomes easier to notice the big ones when they show up. So please feel free to share in the chat, how to go today. Did any of that show up for you? We'll chat about that here in a bit. The arrow, Anne talks about the 2 arrows of the Buddhist teaching. I like this example. It's pretty good. It's basically the idea is that you're out on the battlefield and you get hit by an arrow, and so that arrow is painful, right? And so that arrow is painful, and then what we tend to do is go, ouch, the arrow, oh my goodness, the arrow hurts so much. Look at this guy next to me. He didn't get hit by an arrow. Why am I the one being hit by the arrow? Oh, this is so awful, right? And so the second arrow is that story we tell ourselves about how bad it is, right? And you can imagine, right, if you're on a battlefield and you're telling yourself that story, you're not going to be as good of a warrior as the person who isn't telling themselves this story, right? So you can keep going on. I mean, that's what you see the hero in the story, right? This like full of arrows and still going on and still focused on the goal and saying, I can do it. I can defeat the enemy. Even if I die, I'm going to do my best to fulfill my duty. And I think that's a really great attitude. Thanks, Anne, for bringing up that story. Imagine the worst unless I have facts, right? Well, and this is interesting too, because we don't have to imagine the worst, and I get it, right? And here's why. The justification of imagining the worst is I'm like, well, at least I can be prepared. Like the old saying is, hope for the best, expect the worst, hope for the best. Right? But the problem is that expecting the worst sometimes actually makes us kind of subconsciously hope for the worst as well. So, is it possible to be aware of the worst thing that can happen without imagining that it's actually going to happen? Cece says, my mind always goes off on tangents. Just keep persevering and go back to the breath. So thanks for sharing. And I think that's about it. I'd love to hear more stories if you've got them about how the meditation today went or how your meditations in general go. But if not, it's okay. It's about time for me to wrap up anyway. So need to distract from negative thoughts. Well, and this is always the question too. Is I think one of the problems with distracting yourself from negative thoughts is that it starts to be in that realm of avoidance and denial. So, trying to distract ourselves from our thoughts may be harmful in the long run. So the real question is, just like meditation practice, can we be aware of those thoughts? It's just like, I'm sitting here, my right knee it's filled with pain. Can I be aware of that without having that second arrow to come in and go, oh my gosh, my knee's in so much pain. Oh, I can't wait for this meditation to be over. And these kind of things. Is it possible to be aware, to welcome these difficult and challenging and negative thoughts, and recognize that it's part of you, that you have these negative thoughts, that it's not some arbitrary non-personal being, right? It's these thoughts are me. These thoughts are part of me, and can I recognize that and to welcome it and to go, this is something that happens. This is something that I do, and I'm aware that I have these negative thoughts sometimes. And instead of distracting myself from the thought, can I be aware of the thought, be aware that the thought is false, and to write some news story for myself. Thank you so much, Ren, for sharing. But it's almost as tough if you expect something, then the good, then you will jinx it. Is it? Is that true? Do we always jinx ourselves when we have a good thought? I don't believe that. Thanks J.E. for sharing. I think that if you have a good thought and you think you're going to jinx that good thought, then the probability of you actually jinxing it is a lot higher. So is it possible to have those thoughts and to be aware of that belief that we might be jinxing ourselves by having a positive thought, and to rewrite that story as well? A daily self-compassion practice helps me with those unhelpful thoughts. Thanks, Jean, for sharing, and thanks also for segueing me into our next set of topics. So I'm going on vacation in June, so after today we have 2 more sessions until that vacation time. The last 2 sessions are going to be self-compassion. So that's kind of what tags on to the end of this. So part of writing that new story and to not believing that we're going to constantly screw up things has to do with our belief about ourselves and the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so it's possible to have a lot of thoughts that are destructive and self-destructive. And is it possible to kind of rewrite the way, to have a new habit of how we talk to ourselves? And so that's what the last 2 practices are going to be on next week on Tuesday and Thursday. So, thanks, Kimberly, for being here. And J.E. says, not that we will jinx it, but the universe will. It's like, oh, I think she thinks something good will happen and we'll fix her wagon. Well, so now that's on the realm of belief. And so I think one thing that I always try to do here is about Ryan's mindfulness practice is to kind of bring belief out of the equation. So, so that you can be a Christian, you can believe that the universe does things, you can be a Buddhist, you can be a Hindu, and you can join this practice. So, so I'm just try and stay neutral on that. I personally don't believe that the universe is listening to me, right, and has some kind of power over what's going to happen in my daily life. But that's just me. Thanks everybody for being here. Do take care. Have a lovely day or evening. We're going to do some self-compassion practice next week. So please do join in next week, as this is a very, very powerful practice that can help in all of the things that we've been describing when it comes to stress, that we've talked about in the last few weeks. So hope that you'll join in. If today's your first time joining, please follow me on Insight Timer. That's very helpful. Listen to my tracks. I've got some really good self-compassion tracks out there. Thanks a lot for your support. Let's close our practice the way that we do is with sending, miniature compassion practice, sending well wishes to ourselves and out to each other. So follow along with me if you like. You can repeat out loud or in your mind, whatever is more comfortable for you, or you can just listen. May I be happy and peaceful. May everyone watching, listening, wherever you are, I wish you all happiness and peace. And may all human beings everywhere in this world, including those who have not yet been born, I wish us all happiness and peace. Yes, thanks, Gene. Come to Ryan's Daily Mindfulness Circle. We're having a few more chats and shares in there. That's in Insight Timer groups. It's kind of like my Discord server for Insight Timer to stay in touch with everybody when we're offline. Also, Gene leads a lot of nice group meditations in there, so you can join in there. Thanks a lot. See you on Tuesday. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone. Lots of love to you all. See you next time. Bye-bye.